So if you're making a movie and you need some kick-ass practical effects in it, who do you go to? Of course, the one, the only, Sex Machine! Come on, Sex Machine! Smoke and Mirrors, the story of Tom Savini, is brought to us by director Jason Baker and stars, well, Tom Savini. So Smoke and Mirrors is a documentary chronicling the life and times of Tom Savini. If you don't know who Tom Savini is, I bet you know his work. He's probably best known for his special effects contributions to the horror community with things like Dawn of the Dead, Creepshow, and more. But he's also an actor and director. He did actually play a part as like the biker gang leader in Dawn of the Dead, and he was also Sex Machine in From Dusk Till Dawn. On the directorial front, he's probably best known as the director of the 1990 remake of Night of the Living Dead, aka the only good remake of Night of the Living Dead. Among all of those things, he is also a father, a husband, a teacher, and a lover of cinema. And while being the creator of some of these really gnarly, nasty, yet cool special effects throughout the years, you would think that this guy's probably kind of twisted. We find that he's actually kind of a nice guy. A nice guy who has had some pretty fucked up things happen to him throughout his life though. This is a pretty straightforward documentary. It starts with him in the early years when he was a child, leading up to when he became an adult and wanted to get into the industry but kept hitting like all kinds of hurdles, and when he finally did break into the industry and eventually kinda had to step away from it for his own reasons and go on the whole convention circuit to make ends meet all the way up to today. Now even though this thing doesn't really break any new ground in documentary storytelling, what it does do is offer a wealth of well-known names that are here to talk about Tom Savini. Savini is extremely well known in the industry, and he's made a ton of friends, and lots of people show up to talk about how great the guy is and the impact he's had not just on their films but the industry as a whole. We get people like Tom Atkins, Alice Cooper, Corey Feldman, Danny McBride, Sid Haig, Bill Moseley, Robert Rodriguez, George A. Romero. I mean, the list just goes on. This guy like knows everybody in the fucking industry. This movie has the most star-studded cast of any movie I think I've ever seen. And yeah, it is a documentary, but damn, they got a whole bunch of motherfuckers to come talk about this guy. And while those insights were really neat and interesting, and it was really fun to see all these big names come on and talk about Savini, the things that I found most interesting about this film was his personal life, especially his early life. Tom had some really rough times throughout his life. From the death of his brother, to the death of his father, to coming home from the military and his daughter having been put up for adoption, so he never even met her until she became like 35. And as fucked up as that sounds, the whole story about how his father died is just like, holy shit, that is one of the most heartbreaking things I have ever heard in my life. Not only that, that's some shit that would fucking scar somebody for life. However, we learn one of the greatest things about Tom Savini is even though he has been through all these terrible things, like some really fucked up things I didn't even mention, and he's seen all kinds of bad things throughout his life, he never let that get him down. He always tried to see the positive things in what's going on. And if he didn't see the positive things, he said, you know what, life goes on. Things are gonna get better. By his own account, he doesn't live in the past and he doesn't live in the future. He lives in the right now, because right now is what matters. And that was a bit inspirational. The guy's living his best life. No, everything wasn't perfect and everything's not perfect now, but in this moment right now, it is perfect. And I think that's just a really awesome way to look at life, and it seems like it's really working out for him. To hear him sit there in his own words and just candidly tell his life story is just really interesting. And it doesn't seem like he holds anything back. He puts out the good, the bad, and the ugly. He fully accepts and acknowledges the mistakes he's made in life, and I think that's one of the things that made this documentary interesting. It wasn't a cookie cutter glossy story. We didn't get just the good stuff. No, he let us in on a whole lot of stuff. There were in fact a couple of times when he said things to the camera and said, you know, I've never told anybody that, so you guys were the first to hear it. He's just a really fascinating guy who just loved film and wouldn't take know for an answer. There's not much that I didn't enjoy about this movie. I mean, if I had to point at one thing, I'd say, yeah, I guess it is a bit of a conventional documentary. Like, we don't get a whole lot more information about his career or anything. Now, we do get a lot of information about his personal life, but as far as him and what he's actually known for in the world, no, there's not a whole lot more. It's more of a recap. But that's not really what I was here for. Yeah, sure, there's some things that do pop up about his career that I didn't know. But as I said, the most interesting parts are about the man himself. And that's what the vast majority of this film's about. Even when talking about his career, it is always about him and what was going on behind the scenes. And I thought that was a really great direction for this documentary to go, to focus on the man, because he is the most interesting part here. Now, this movie was actually made, believe it or not, in 2015, but it's been doing like the festival circuits and stuff like that, and it's finally getting its official release this month in 2021. Something else about this movie that might turn a whole lot of people off at first glance, and that is who's distributing the film. This is a Wild Eye release. Now, if you know anything about the company Wild Eye Releasing and what they have released in the past, you'll know that it's typically not seen as that great. But believe me, this film does not fall within their wheelhouse whatsoever. So don't let that name, Wild Eye Releasing, scare you away. How the fuck they ended up with this movie though, I'll never know. But hey, you know what? I'm just happy, regardless of who's doing it, that this thing is getting an actual release. Also, for horror fans, especially old school horror fans, this movie's almost like required viewing. So if you consider yourself a horror fan, then what the fuck are you doing? Go watch this flick. Guys, there's not much more I can say about Smoke and Mirrors. It's a really entertaining, interesting, deep dive into this man, this myth, this legend, Tom Savini. Even if you don't know that name, believe me, you do know his work. And while this is a fairly straightforward documentary, it is still a really interesting documentary and absolutely worth your time. And what it also is absolutely worth a buy.
Do it! Do it!
Show me the money!
Do it!
You motherfucker!
So,
Show me the money!
do it!
I ain't gonna lie, when I got this screener and saw Wild Eye Releasing on it, I did not have high hopes for it. But I was extremely surprised by how good this documentary is. It is absolutely worth your time. So if you're looking for a really interesting, thought-provoking, heartbreaking at times documentary for the night, then check out this movie and I think you'll have a great time with it. So there it is, guys, my review of Smoke and Mirrors, the story of Tom Savini. If you enjoyed, want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon in the description below and become a jarhead and get some of the awesome benefits to go along with that, like these guys. And possibly join my top tier and become a bad motherfucker like my man Greg. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Pittsburgh.
Can't say horror movies without thinking about Savini.
Because I think of makeup effects as a magic trick.
I think this is the first documentary that I've ever reviewed on my channel, by the way. I'm not 100% sure. I watch a lot of documentaries, but I don't think I've ever reviewed one. I think so. Not 100% sure, but I think so. So I hope you guys like it. I know it was probably a little bit different than my other reviews, but hey, it is what it is. Like I said, I think this is the first one, so no pressure.